Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to At the Book here on bet.nola.com. Zach Ewing along with Devin Jackson and Jim Derry. We are here on the eve of mobile sports betting launch in Louisiana. It is coming tomorrow, and that means today is the last day you can sign up for our NOLA.com special with Caesar Sportsbook, a $300 bonus just for signing up, and up to a $3,000 deposit match. Tomorrow, that offer goes down. The app goes live at 9 a.m., and the offer will go down at that point. So if you want to get in on this offer, this is your last chance. NOLA.com/Caesars is the way to do that. And sign up for the app, put the money in. Anything you put in before 9 a.m. will be matched up to $3,000. So just want to get that out of the way. Of course, it's a big day. We'll be mentioning a lot about that today and also about the AFC and NFC Championship games coming up on Sunday. And to that end, I want to jump right in. Adam Chernoff from Covers.com, kind enough to join us today, and he is here joining us from Canada. And I have to start, Adam, I have to let you know I consider it an act of international aggression that the Canadians scheduled the World Cup qualifier for 2 p.m. Sunday. I don't understand that, but we have nukes, man.
Was it on us, or was it a mutual agreement to play it then?
I thought it was a host country thing, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Hey, we're not happy about it too, because there's obviously much more important things to watch, but that's a very close second on a day like Sunday. So it's unfortunate, but we might have to get 2 screens going.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a double screen experience, I think. The good news is it looks like we're both going to be in Qatar in November. So enough soccer talk. We'll talk about football now. AFC Championship game is first. It's been fascinating. In fact, I want to start actually by saying you should follow Adam at Adam Chernoff on Twitter. That's CHERNOFF, and follow the Covers Daily podcast, The Simple Handicap. He does a terrific job, and I thought this morning was completely fascinating with the college basketball lines. Explain what y'all are doing with that, just so people know.
So we are working together with Right Angle Sports, which is a well-known betting syndicate. They've been around for about 25 years. Are some of the most influential bettors in the entire country. And they specialize in college basketball and they're scattered all out throughout the US, and they all work together. The problem is when they bet on a game, as soon as they click bet, they're moving a line anywhere from 1 to 3 points. And so we wanted to do something with them in terms of giving out their bets on a show in some sort of context. The problem was they have so many people who are following them, bookmakers included, guys in trading rooms, as well as people that bet on what they do as well, that if we were just to give out picks on air, we would be moving a market anywhere from 2 to 3 points within a matter of seconds. And so we came up with a bit of a creative way to where we can give the bet out and ensure that everybody has a chance to get the same price with a little bit of, it kind of feels a bit like a game, but it's a bit of a set up and go system where everyone has a chance to add the bet into their bet slip. It's either a bet or a cancel. And I think this morning, most people got on the same side of each of the numbers at the same price. So it's fun. But when you're working with people like that have as much influence in the betting market as they do, you have to get a little bit creative. So we went pretty well, and we got some good feedback from it. And we're going to continue through into the first week of March Madness.
I thought it was a lot of fun, even though we can't bet yet here until tomorrow. But Saturday morning, 9:30 a.m. Saturday, is that 9:30 Central? Is that the time you'll do it again?
Yeah, we'll be on every it's 10:30 Eastern, so 9:30 a.m. Central. Yep, we'll do that every Thursday and Saturday throughout the rest of the season.
So if you're looking to bet some of that Caesar's bonus cash, I mean, there are worse ways to do it probably than
good place to start
at Right Angle. So we'll talk a little football first. We'll give Caitlin a shout out. Hey, Caitlin. And, you know, we've been listening to you all week long. Obviously, some big games that have been handicapped from every which angle this weekend. Let's start with Kansas City and Cincinnati. And the Bengals have become everybody's second favorite team down here because of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and the LSU connection. What is your strongest play on this game?
So I bet the over at a little bit of a better number. I'd still take it right now. This is a matchup to where we're seeing the same total that last week closed with the Bills, but the Bengals, a much worse defense when it comes to defending the Chiefs. The Bills were sort of built to it. Cincinnati, they struggle with 2 things specifically. It's passes to running backs out of the backfield, and it's defending tight ends and passes over the middle. They're the worst defense in the NFL at doing both of those things. And if we think about how Kansas City has been able to move the ball, especially in the second half of the season as their offense has evolved, it's targeting the middle of the field and it's throwing underneath to slot receivers and to running backs. And so when you look at this matchup from a Chiefs offense versus Bengals defensive perspective, tough to find one better for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. And we saw them put up 31 points on this Bengals defense just a few weeks ago in a game that was sort of limited with possessions in the second half. And on the other side, although the Bengals were aided with some referee help and they were aided with a couple of big catches, this is a Chiefs secondary that I still think is going to be pressed a little bit by Burrow, by Chase, by that Bengals offense, where Cincinnati can do their part of holding up the total. So feel pretty good about this over. I think we see a ton of points in a very exciting back and forth game.
Adam, I have Jim Derry here. I have a question. I know bettors usually use the professional bettors anyway. They use their points ratings and how much better a team is via points, and they don't put a lot of gut into it. They strictly go by numbers. And that being said, do you feel like Kansas City is in a spot here where they could be a little flat? I get it that it's the AFC Championship game, and it's hard to come into a spot to be flat in such a big game. But as much energy as they expelled Cincinnati coming in with an extra day's rest, which I think is important, and they actually have been home quite a bit, so they should be fairly rested. Does that worry you? Does that concern you at all?
I think in any other week but this specific one, to an extent, certainly. And like you mentioned, there's the extra day rest, and it wasn't like that game was easy by any stretch for the Chiefs coming down to the last second and then in overtime. And that was the late game on Sunday. The Bengals got out early on Saturday. So that all plays into it. I think the big thing that Burrow specifically and this young Bengals team gets a little bit of a pass on because of how he handles himself in the media and how we sort of perceive him as bettors and fans is the fact that young quarterbacks have really struggled historically in their first year within the playoffs. And he's kind of got by along with the Bengals of drawing two pretty favorable and easy opponents in the Titans and the Raiders in rounds 1 and 2. And so although the Bengals have got by, it certainly hasn't been on the arm of Joe Burrow like they did it many times during the regular season. And so while this is a rematch, it's the AFC Conference Championship, all of these things, I think, sort of help Kansas City from avoiding that potential letdown, like you mentioned. And I actually think it's on the other side where it's the Bengals and this young offense that kind of go in with all the pressure on them in terms of trying to keep pace with this Chiefs offense.
It's fascinating stuff either way. Let's move on to the NFC game on Sunday evening. Rams, 49ers, another rematch. It's a third meeting. And as we all know, the storyline here, the 49ers have owned the Rams. I thought it was interesting, though. You had a podcast earlier this week where you sort of gave some specific strategic reasons for why that is.
Yeah, one of the better breakdowns I've heard was from a guest of mine, Eric Eager, who works with Pro Football Focus. He's a data scientist over there, and they have more numbers about football games than anything. But when we watch the 49ers, you see a lot of things going on at the line of scrimmage. It's kind of the MO of Kyle Shanahan, if you will. There's guys in motion. They're switching positions. They've got a bunch of fullbacks, juice check that they move around. Bottom line is pre-snap, no team uses offensive motion in the NFL more than the San Francisco 49ers. And I was trying to figure out what was going on. Like, why is Shanahan dominating McVay in this Rams team? Like, what's the story here? And it's interesting that it was pointed out that the Rams as a defense disguise their coverage pre-snap to post-snap. So in other words, they're in motion on defense more than any other team in the NFL. And when you put those two things together, what the 49ers offense forces the Rams defense into doing is staying static pre and post-snap for just that extra second or two. It really takes away their advantage that they have defensively in coverage that they use to be one of the more effective units in the NFL. And so from just a matchup perspective, it really benefits San Francisco. But another thing that works out here is the Rams because they're very weak at linebacker, they use the least amount of defenders inside the box of any team per snap in the NFL. And so when you think about, again, how San Francisco likes to work their offense, it's that very effective and sort of modern and different running game that's really, really effective. So it's not only what the 49ers do pre-snap, but also how they like to call plays. It's just a bad matchup for this Rams defense. And so we're hearing on media how dominant the 49ers with Shanahan have been, McVay, but we haven't really been hearing why, and that's a lot to it. It's just the way that the 49ers run their offense just works really well against how the Rams are built. So this is round 3, obviously. Niners won the first 2, and we're getting essentially the same price we saw just a couple of weeks ago. I think for me, it's really tough to justify this being more than the field goal, so I really like the points here with San Francisco.
One more thing before we let you go. A couple more things, actually, and one is
absolutely
the Saints head coach position and their quarterback position, both after being the most stable in the NFL outside of maybe Pittsburgh and New England over the last 15 years. They're both open now at the same time. What do you look for if you're the Saints? Are you looking for as much stability as possible at Dennis Allen? Do you go outside the box? Do you bring in somebody who can bring in his own quarterback? What's your take on that?
The only concern really with Dennis Allen is not a lot of teams have shown a positive trajectory after hiring and inputting a defensive coach into the head coaching role. There's a few examples of it where it succeeded, but in general, right now, with the way the league is trending, you really want to have an offensive guy in that spot. And the Saints, even post Breeze, have kind of been able to disguise a little bit of the issues they've had at skill positions and elsewhere within the roster because Sean Payton was such a brilliant offensive mind and such a creative offensive play caller. My concern with Allen, although he is obviously well respected within the organization, is that it's going to be very hard to find that complementary piece from an offensive coordinator perspective. So to me, it's not necessarily just about like the stability that they're going to have to find at the quarterback position, but they're also going to have to find something to fill that void that's left at the play calling position specifically, because without Payton, it's just, I mean, this offense, if you take Sean Payton out of the equation this year, that is a bottom 5 offense at best that he was able to get a lot out of. And so that to me is the biggest concern going forward, and the Saints are going to have to find someone to fill that role.
As far as sports betting goes, and Covers is probably the industry leader in just covering the analytical side of this, line movements, all of that. What's been the coolest thing for you as you watch this sort of take over the United States and Canada? State by state, Louisiana launches tomorrow. What has the experience been like for you, and what should we expect when mobile betting goes live tomorrow morning?
Well, there's initially a lot of excitement, I think, for a new state opening. People who have wanted to bet for a long time have been betting for a long time. Let's be honest about that. I don't think it's a secret that sports betting has existed for a long time in many ways, but the excitement of having it out and in front, I think, is big for everybody. And so there's certainly a lot of fun that comes with that, a lot of opportunity through promotions for new bettors to take advantage of, not just from an advertising perspective, but a lot of these things that are going to be thrown at bettors are very, very advantageous. It's not just something that's being dangled in front of you. It's basically a handout to get your business. And so it's a rare opportunities for bettors who are new or maybe looking to build a little bit of a bankroll or sort of have fun with it to actually really take advantage of some good promos. So that's certainly something that should be exciting for all players. But then I think just for all of us that are fans of football, fans of basketball, that have always had to sort of talk about this behind the scenes, just to have it like open and be able to talk about it like we're doing right now, to me is the big thing. Like that's makes it so easy to have these conversations, and we're seeing a lot of innovation come from it. So it's exciting for players because there's new opportunities, new places to play, but I think it's equally exciting for us and myself as these more states open up to get to do shows like this with guys like yourself and be able to talk about it in the open. So it's only going to get more and more, and it's going to be exciting for you guys tomorrow in Louisiana when it opens up and everyone's ready to go.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And Devin is there at Harrah's, and I think he had a question as well.
Yeah, I had a question kind of about the NFL this year. Were there any bets that you placed like preseason that you're still kind of hanging on to in terms of, maybe Super Bowl, a team picking to win the Super Bowl or anything like that?
A lot more than I regret not making than I still have pending. I'm not a huge guy when it comes to futures preseason, just because the way I bet tends to be more beneficial for me to go week to week rather than holding out. But do have a little bit of interest in the 49ers. And something I will say that sort of rooting for the people who are fans of Burrow and Chase may be interested in, to me, the ideal matchup within the Super Bowl, not just because I have some interest in San Francisco, but just from what we'll get next week. If the 49ers end up playing the Bengals, there's some look ahead prices that sportsbooks are posting to where the 49ers are going to be less than a field goal favorite against Cincinnati. And to me, if that matchup happens to come to fruition and we get 2 upsets on Sunday, the 49ers for me against the Bengals in the Super Bowl would be just more than welcome, because it would be one of the biggest Super Bowl bets that I would ever make, just because of how advantageous that matchup on the field is for San Francisco. So I don't know if we'll get it. I'm hoping we do, but that would be something I'm looking forward to. And it would also be good for some San Francisco bets that I've been holding on to for a little while now.
Adam, I have a question, but first I do want to give Covers a shout out. I will say this. I've been writing an NFL picks column for, I think, 8 years now, where I pick every game every week and give a little, reasoning behind whether it's a little comical or straight or whatever. But I will say this. I've used Covers for a long time now, and the free content that you guys put out to be able to allow amateurs like myself to go through the data and form my own handicap and my own opinion is it's immeasurable how important it has been throughout just me going through. And I would suggest that a lot of people go check your site out, because it's incredible, the guys that you do put out for free. So thank you for that, for sure.
Appreciate that very much.
My question,
Jim, we actually pay you now. You don't have to call yourself an amateur anymore. We actually,
yeah, I guess I'm a semi-professional. Yeah. You wouldn't know it by my bankroll. No, I'm just kidding. Speaking of that, my question is related to futures, and it's kind of a personal question, but I think it goes for maybe some other people out there. I don't know whether you call it good picking or just sheer luck. Okay, but preseason, I put a big future down on the Rams to win the Super Bowl. A lot of people thought the Rams would. I thought it was a decent price. 13-1 was a decent price, so I bet on them. And I usually just pick 1 or 2 before the season starts. That was my one. And then in October, I like to pick a few more. And so I got Bengals at 150-1, just $10. I wish I would have put a few more bucks on it, but I also picked the Niners to win the NFC Championship.
And, you got everything.
Right. So I lost the Bills last week. It would have been a Final Four clean sweep, and I wouldn't have cared what happened this week, to be honest. But I guess my question is, with those 3 picks and fairly decent payouts, do professional bettors consider? I know a lot of times they don't consider hedging. They just let it roll and let the chips fall where they may. But how do you view hedging, and what kind of hedge would you think of in a situation to either play Kansas City and take the plus 130 in some sort of way, or maybe some sort of exacta thing?
So in general, hedging, as you said, mathematically is a bad idea, because for the most part, the first bet that was made is most often a bad bet to begin with, that has got to a point that it's obviously not completed, because you're thinking about hedging, and adding on another bet to go against it would just, in most cases, be adding a bad bet on top of a bad bet and reducing the expected value that comes from each. But we'll leave that on the side. But the fundamental thing that you have to ask is, there's basically 2 questions. The first one is, did anything from the bet that was made drastically change? So for example, if you have the Cincinnati Bengals that ticket that you're holding on to. If a situation came about where like Joe Burrow was injured or Jamar Chase was injured, right, and the team changed drastically, that really impacts the bet that you initially made. In the case that you're sitting with right now, I don't think any of that applies to either of the three. So you kind of just have these three tickets and you're in a really good spot. So then the second question you have to ask when it comes to hedging is, would any of the potential wins from these bets be life-changing money to me or yourself or anyone who's in the hedging spot? Because there's maybe a chance that you bet too much initially, or the potential return just because of how things are for you personally. Like, you want to secure some of that potential return and you don't necessarily care about riding it out. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case for you, but hearing that you have an NFC team that you're either going to win the bet because you have San Francisco to win the NFC, or you're going to have the Rams in the Super Bowl, that's a pretty advantageous position to be in, where you don't really have to do anything until next week. So if I'm in your position, I can answer probably the first one. I can't answer the second, but I would say that you probably don't have to make a decision until the Super Bowl, because you're going to either win the San Francisco bet or you're going to have a team in there, and you've got the chance to have both teams potentially. So you're in a really good spot. A lot of bettors would envy, but it really comes down each time with a hedge to that personal question of being like, do I need to secure any of this money? And that's really all it comes down to most of the time.
Great answer. Thank you. I guess the reason why I don't think I'll ever be a bet. I mean, it's different giving advice and actually going out there and putting your own money on the line, right? And I do put my own money on the line, but the reason why I don't think I could ever be a professional bettor and do just betting for a living is because I'm the kind of guy who I like to make sure I get something, right? I mean,
sure.
As far as life-changing money, no, I don't think any of this is grand scheme of things life-changing money, at least not for me. But I'm trying to look at I like to write everything down and look and say, okay, this is what I'll guarantee that you win something. I guess almost out of, hey, I made these really good bets, which may not have been great bets at the time, but they turned out to be. And then to not get anything out of it because Kansas City, which is the obvious favorite, getting nothing out of, what I'm saying. I'm just trying to get something. So I don't know what I'm going to do yet, I guess, to answer that, but it's a strange situation, one that I'm not in all that often.
And to just reiterate, like when I'm saying that it potentially was a bad bet to begin with, in general, all bets that are futures are considered bad bets because there's a really expensive price, which is the sportsbook hold that exists within those markets. So usually in a futures market, it's very difficult to find like a big advantage. Now, you placed a bet looking at the teams and you got the price that you did, and it's working out really well. So like it's turning into a spot where you have a very valuable ticket that sort of gained a lot of equity over the last however many weeks you've been sitting it out. But like if we go back to that starting point, a bet into a futures market, as fun as it is, and it's not deterring people from betting futures, because for the majority of people, it's about enjoying the bet that they have and having that rooting interest. But it's a bet on a future to win the Super Bowl, to win the college basketball championship. It's just a really expensive bet to make from the hold percentage. That's where sportsbooks make a lot of their money. So there's obviously a lot of risk that comes with it, and usually that risk is pretty expensive. So when I say that, that's what I'm referring to. What
you're saying is it's a lot harder to weigh the VIG in a future bet because you can't really see it, right? You can see what if you bet a spread, it's minus 110. It's easy to see what it is, or even if you bet a money line, it's easier to see for one game. But it's not easier to see what they're actually charging you in a futures bet because there's really no way to tell what it is.
You would have to add up the probabilities of all of the teams within the futures market and then subtract that from 100%. It's math that not a lot of people will do, but just the general rule of thumb is sportsbooks on a point spread bet on just any game, like any conference championship game, for every $100 that is bet on those games, they'll put between $4 and $5 in their pocket.
Right.
That's called the hold. when it comes to futures, for every $100 that's his bet into a futures pool, they'll put about 35 to 40. So it just kind of illustrates how disadvantageous the prices are and how they're able to disguise it. Because you see the Bengals at 100 to 1 and you go, oh my God, this is a huge payout. But in reality, at that time, the true odds should have been 300-400 to 1, like a lot bigger. And so it's just the payout disguises how expensive the bets actually are.
They are fun when they hit. Now, the other thing is you don't get that money. You can't. The money's sitting and it's frozen for 3 or 4 months. Also, that's the other part of that is that you can't use that money for anything else. So, Uncle Big Nick is saying this because he's a 49ers fan. Adam, but
I understand.
But I agree. I do agree that you're very smart. So anyway, we appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we hope to have you on again. And we're all getting excited.
I'm looking forward to seeing the reaction to everything that opens up tomorrow from you guys and how it's looking across the state. So it's great that it's getting the green light down there, and I'm hoping it's as fun as it has been everywhere else.
All right. That's Adam Chernoff from Covers.com. We appreciate it, Adam. That was great. And by the way, we're going from Adam to James Carville, which is about, you're getting your cold-hearted statistical analysis from Canada, and then you're going to the Raging Cajun, who doesn't give a care what he says or how, Hey,
the Cajuns, a lot of Cajuns in Canada, so
that's
a little different.
I should have mentioned to him we're going from Chernoff to Carville, so that's fantastic. But let's take a minute before we move on to James Carville, and let's just talk quickly about these games on Sunday because I want to get y'all's takes too. Bengals and Chiefs, Jim, I know you're on the Bengals here, and it feels like that's the smart side. The way Burrow's playing, getting 7 points. At the same time, you hate to bet again. I mean, this is you're talking about two teams that have a lot of momentum at this point.
It's really a tough one, and both of these games are super tough. So, I mean, in a regular week, if these two teams were playing, it would never be my best bet, right? I mean, this is the kind of game where you could see the Bengals winning. I mean, you really could. I mean, I don't necessarily agree. I mean, the Adams of the world, look, they crunch numbers. They look at numbers. They don't really put a lot of stock into flat. They do somewhat, but they don't put a lot of stock into flat spots and how many weeks teams been on the road. Some of them do, but really it's just about this is what my spread says it should be. My spread says it should be Chiefs minus 7.5, and they bet on they'll bet on the Bengals or the Chiefs based on whatever their value says. But that's not how I go for the most part. And it just seems to me that you just can't doubt Joe Burrow anymore. The dude is unflappable. Now, he could go out and throw 3 picks on Sunday and prove me wrong. But when you see something for so long and how he's developed through the course of the season and the offensive weapons he has and the awful Kansas City secondary, I just think he's going to be able to pick them apart. He threw for 446 yards the last time they played and 4 touchdowns, and he was banged up coming off. I think he was coming off a concussion protocol or something. You can't. And I know how as great as Patrick Mahomes is, it's a really tough game. It wouldn't shock me if the Chiefs won by 3 touchdowns. It really wouldn't. But my handicap says that this is a spot where the Bengals, I think, are in a really good one because they did just play them a few weeks ago. They all are confident that they can beat them. They know they can beat them. They know they can throw all over them. And this Bengals defensive front is much healthier than it was when they played them the first time. I think they're going to put pressure on Mahomes. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Kansas City Chiefs are sitting around thinking, okay, what are we going to do in Hollywood, boys? Just thinking they're going, because I think that's the way they feel right now.
Yeah, I do. I get that perspective. I'm on the Chiefs, and I'm with you. I mean, if this is a normal week, I wouldn't touch this game. I'm touching it because, when there's only 2 games, you want to play something, you got to play one of them. I feel like everything you said about Burrow is correct, and Joe Burrow will be back in this situation multiple times in his career. However, I feel like this year's team has just about maxed out what it can do, and they've now reached the point where they've kind of come up against the baddest kids on the block, and they're going to see what it's going to take to beat Kansas City in the playoffs in Kansas City, and then they'll be that much better the next time they get to this stage. But I do feel like this is where it ends. Devin, your take, and then we'll do Carville and we'll do the NFC on the other side. But what's your take on the AFC game?
Yeah, so to me, this Bengals team kind of reminds me of the early Andrew Luck teams where, he comes in, he kind of brings back the franchise to prominence, brings them back to the playoffs, gets playoff wins that they haven't had in quite a while. But I do think, with everything considered, I think the Bengals will play very well in the first half. And I think they're going to come out ready to play, juiced up. They may have some nerves in their first AFC Championship, but they're not scared of Kansas City. But I do think this team has overachieved far beyond what they've done all season long. Just the way that their offensive line has operated during the playoffs. I mean, they've given up a ton of sacks for Joe Burrow. How Jamar Chase has kind of evolved as one of the better receivers in the NFL. I just think Kansas City is going to be too much for the Bengals ultimately on Sunday. And I think Kansas City covers the spread, even though it's a large spread. I just think once the second half comes around, Kansas City is going to make the adjustments they need to. And I think Cincinnati is just going to run out of gas, point blank, period, just in this game. Just because the Chiefs, they understand what they need to do. They've been here before. Obviously, they remember what happened last year in the Super Bowl, and I think they're motivated to get back there and go back and win. And I think the Bengals will put up a great fight in this game, but I just think this team is there a couple years ahead of their kind of curve of what they thought they would be. And I think they've played about as well as they can and had the breaks go the way they can, but I just ultimately think the Chiefs will be too much on Sunday.
Yeah, and my favorite bet in this game is the over. I think both defenses are banged up. I think both are worn out, and I think both quarterbacks are some of the elite players in the NFL, and they're going to take advantage. And it's a high total, but you don't see playoff totals that high unless there's a reason for it, and I think there's a reason for it.
Zach, one more quick thing before you get to Carville, and as weird and silly as this might sound to some people, I'd be more inclined to bet Kansas City if it was 7.5 and not 7. 7's telling me that they're begging people. They want to even this out as much as they can. And I think at 7, you're enticing people to bet on Kansas City. So maybe the lines makers they're not as strong on Kansas City as one might think, because I think the numbers say that this should be 7.5 or even 8. So I'd be more inclined to lead toward Kansas City. But the fact that they know that they want as many Kansas City bets as they can get, and the way to do that is to have it 7 and not 7.5, tells me that they think that this is going to be a closer game.
And it's fascinating because it has bounced to 7.5 just very briefly a couple times this week and immediately gone back to 7. So that speaks in with what you're saying, is that they'll go to 7.5 just for a second, and then the money starts piling in on the Bengals, and whoops, let's get it back to 7. So it has been fascinating, and it'll be great to see. I'm a soccer fan. I'm going to have the two screens. I'm going to have US Canada on my laptop or something while I'm watching the game. So
I do think the over is super square, by the way. I won't touch that total with a stick. It seems way too obvious. There is no way I'm betting a total in this game. And if I had to bet a total, I'd bet the under, because Aunt Mabel, Drunk Joe, and every guy in a bar is going to be clicking on his Caesar Sportsbook app to take the over, because they think that 80 points is going to be scored in this game. And it might, but I ain't touching it.
I don't know about 80, but I think 60. All right. Speaking of entertaining, let's get to James Carville for this week. And we got to a lot this week. We talked about last week's games. We talked about the overtime rule. This you'll enjoy this. Here's Cashing In with Carville for championship week. Welcome to Cashing In with Carville Championship Week edition. Zach Ewing here with James Carville. It is another lovely Thursday. We are preparing for the Final Four in the NFL, James, and we're, as we were just talking off air, finally it seems like this last COVID wave is hopefully behind us. We're past that part of it. The NFL is certainly acting like we're past that part of it.
Yeah, I think, it's when it's done with us, not when we're done with it. But I think a lot of people are done with it. And these numbers do look a little promising. I hope we're back to normal here before long.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of back to normal, it sure seems like the NFL is just back to its media dominating self. I mean, everybody was watching those games last weekend. You've watched football for a long time. Where does last weekend rank for you as far as just having 4 games all come down to the final play and the excitement level?
Number one, I can't remember so many good games. You know, it was great. I mean, every one of those games was, you know, thrilling. I hated that Buffalo loss, but
yeah, that was a tough one. That was the overtime rules. I mean, a lot of people say something's got to be done. You at least have to give both teams a shot. What's your take on overtime?
We went to the Super Bowl. We beat Minnesota in the Dome, and it was a field goal. If you won the toss and you kicked the field goal, you won the game. All right, so they moved it to a touchdown. I love the college, the way they do it. You put it on the 25 and you go from there. But you know, it's maybe you'd add, but I think the owners, I think they're a little leery about having people on the playing field for too long. It might result in injuries or anything. I don't know, but that's the rule.
That's the rule. Everybody knows it. The Chiefs lost by it a few years ago to New England, and they won by it this weekend. So that's how it goes.
Yeah, we went to the Super Bowl on a field goal in overtime.
That's right. Yeah, and actually, to painful memory, since they implemented the touchdown rule, the only playoff team to lose after winning the overtime coin toss was the Saints in the no-call game. Breeze threw an interception. Rams went down, kicked a field goal.
The worst sports thing I've ever seen in my life. I still can't believe they didn't.
It still hurts. It still hurts. Always will.
I was going out of the suite and Mickey Loomis was walking down. He thought he'd lost his whole family in a car accident or something. He looked so.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, it's tough. And speaking of which, before we get to the picks, James, speaking of Mickey Loomis, he's got a big job to do now. Sean Payton, you've talked about him all season, how much you respect him and the job that he's done in New Orleans. He changed around the franchise and in some ways changed around the city.
God, did he? I mean, I bet you we're like second or third in wins in the last 16 years. I mean,
I think it's fourth, but yeah, right there.
It's high. And, you know, I spent a lot of money on tickets. And you're not going to win every year, but boy, you want to be relevant. All right. And we're a relevant football team, literally every year that Sean Payton was there. And that's what you asked for. And, you know, I remember the 2019 baseball season. I'm a national season ticket holder. I mean, that was great. Now they're not even relevant anymore. You know, LSU football, always relevant. Pelicans basketball, not so much.
That's what you want. When you look for the next coach, Dennis Allen is in-house. He's had head coaching experience. He's the logical choice. But you also have a Brian Flores out there who's well respected. Eric Bieniemy, who's a New Orleans native, and there's not a lot of black coaches around the league. What direction would you like to see him go?
You know, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I'm just not. You know, I think. You know, of course, Dennis Allen has done wonders with the Saints defense. I mean, if you look at the years he's been here and the years before he got here, it really made a difference. But I looked at it, was in the NOLA.com. They had like a list of 8 potential, and I don't have a favorite, honestly.
Somebody who will keep it going, I guess, is the that's the idea.
And Payton's job this year was, you know, going 9-8 with everything that they're faced with. There's one that's probably one of the best coaching jobs of his career. I think the guy just burnt out. I mean, that's hard work.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, when he's got money in the bank and he's got a, you know, new wife, and maybe he's looking for a new life. I don't know. He's earned it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, speaking of Eric Bieniemy and the Chiefs and overtime and everything else, the first game on Sunday is the AFC Championship, 2:00. Chiefs and Bengals. I'm still got my mind on that Bills game from last week. Joe Burrow and the boys, can they complete the Cinderella run all the way to the Super Bowl, the Hollywood story in Hollywood, or will it be the Chiefs who have kind of turned into a dynasty? It's Chiefs -7. What do you like?
You're giving Joe Burrow 7 points. I'm going to take the points. However, I have a great fear that the Bengals win and the Rams win. And Aaron Donald and Von Miller might kill Joe Burrow. I'm serious. I mean,
he got sacked 9 times. Yeah.
If he had an offensive line that was the equivalent of a 270 baseball hitter, they'll tell him what he could do. He's got to have the worst pass protection. I was watching Brady and watching those other quarterbacks out there, and Burrow never has any time, and he's great. But I really kind of I don't want Burrow to play against the Rams. I mean, Aaron Donald, he might be the baddest ass to ever play in the NFL.
Ooh, is he? In that game, we'll also pick the total over or under 54.5 points. It's a high total for a playoff game.
Yeah, and it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I'll take the over.
We'll take the over, and then also more passing yards, Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes.
I'm going to go with the LSU guy.
All right, the hometown kid, Joe Cool. Moving on to the NFC game, I think I know what you'll pick here based on past history, but we'll see. The Rams are hosting the 49ers. They're 3.5-point favorites, but hosting might be a loose term because 49ers are going to have a lot of fans there too.
Yeah, and I like the dog here again. They playing pretty well.
They are.
And 3.5 points is, a lot of games are decided by a field goal. I mean, it's not a minor consideration in my mind. I mean, I tend to like dogs more than most people, but I like them. In this instance, I do like it.
So we'll take the dogs there. And then the over or under in this one, 46.5.
I like the under. I don't think both of these teams are tough. They're, tough on defense. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game. I like the under in this game.
I think on Saturday night it would have taken the 49ers all week to get to 46. So
right.
We'll see. We'll see what goes there. And then the last one, another prop bet, kind of combining the two games, more total yards. So we're combining receiving and rushing. Deebo Samuel, who will do some of both for the 49ers, or another LSU boy in Jamar Chase.
So Deebo has 8 rushing touchdowns.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, it's amazing. And I'm going to pick Deebo, not that I think he's a great receiver, not that I think Jamar Chase is a better receiver, but the key line is total yards.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll obviously gain a bunch of yards rushing. And, he's a very versatile player, but Jamar Chase has somebody really good throwing to him. Deebo less, but I think he'll end up with more total yards.
So we have to ask, you picked both dogs against the spread. The sportsbook apps are going live in Louisiana tomorrow. You can get a $300 bonus by downloading the Caesar Sportsbook app. Should people go parlay both dogs to win the game outright? Are you going that far?
I no, because everybody that does the numbers says a parlay is a bad bet. It should pay out. It's a 110 to 100, but it doesn't. The bookies love when you take a parlay, and there's a reason they do. It gives them
always advertise.
Yeah, it gives them even more of a house advantage than they have. But it's fun to do sometimes. I like. I'll go to here at the Bay St. Louis Casino sometimes, and just I might do that here. The other thing is, I'm an old guy. When I win, I want money in my hand. I don't want a credit on my account. I don't. It doesn't seem. Younger people don't know what money looks like. I have I kind of walk around with a kind of a roll, and my daughter say, "That's embarrassing, Dad. No one does that."
Well, say I do. So
if you pay with a $100 parlay, we would pay like $250.
And on a money line on those dogs, it would pay a lot more than that. So, do you think either dog wins outright?
Well, I mean, look, it's 7 or 3.5. One might.
All right.
That's one. Look, I just hope these games are like the games last week. That's all. Just gives you something to look forward to. And I love the 2 and 5 start times. I don't have to when they start the games at 7:30 at night. For a guy like me, then I'm up awfully late. Where the 2 and the 5 start, I like those starting times.
All right.
Noon is too early.
Well, let's say we take a week off and we'll come back Super Bowl week and do cashing in with Carville one last time for this NFL season.
All right. Well, it's been a blast, Zach.
All right. Thank you,
The
James.
basketball game last night was good. Wow.
Yeah, came back and got a win. And much needed win.
Got a win. Yeah. Good deal. All right.
All right. We'll talk to you next.
By the way, the James Carville cold hard cash parlay of Bengals and Niners on the money line would pay 9-1 on your Caesar Sportsbook app. So I'm just saying it's going to be in credits. It's not going to be cold hard cash. But, I mean, it's got a chance, right?
Dude.
Hold on there.
I say I like cash and I like credits. I'm a poker dude.
I like both.
So,
yeah.
So I have money in my pocket usually, and I hopefully will have credits in my account. I do not like the that money line parlay, but
I think that's probably going a little too far on the Bengals. Let's talk NFC game before we run out of time, though. The NFC game 5:30, the late game on Sunday. Rams minus 3.5. And again, we talked about this with Adam. The Niners have owned the Rams. They've owned them. I mean, we're talking 6 in a row, big games. That obviously the one the Saints fans remember is the game at the end of the regular season where the Rams had a 17-0 lead, couldn't hang on. Jim, why should this time be any different?
Well, first off, if you look at sheer numbers, this is going to be the 24th time in the Super Bowl era that divisional teams faced off in the playoffs. And the old adage, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. Well, the only reason why it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season is because it doesn't happen very often. And in the grand scheme of things, the team that has won the first 2 matchups is 14-9 and should be 15-8, Jared Cook. But it is what it is. The reason why it's going to be different this time is really fairly simple. And I gave 3 reasons in my NFL picks column this morning. I won't go in as much detail here. But reason number 1 is, remember a couple weeks ago when all the pressure was on Matt Stafford? He stunk so bad at the end of the regular season. He was throwing picks. He couldn't do anything right. Well, Matt Stafford has been absolutely outstanding in the playoffs.
Yes, he has.
And he is playing with a lot of confidence. And if you don't think he's geared up for this game, I think he's going to play very well this week. Whether that equates to victory, we'll see. Reason number 2, Deebo Samuel is just plain beat up. If you saw him at the end of the Green Bay game, he had to come off every other play because he was just getting beat up. He's probably bruised underneath that number 19 jersey that he wears. I mean, he had trouble getting off the field a couple times because they're using him too damn much. And look, I get why you use him and you have to use him, and it is what it is. But the number 3 reason for me is the most important reason. The 49ers have been on the road more than any, and I couldn't go back past this century because I frankly don't have that much time. But the 49ers have been on the road, or in the middle of a road stretch that no one has ever seen in the NFL, if you don't include the 2005 Saints that played all their games away from home and they went 3-13. They're about to play their 7th game out of 9 away from home. And I get that it's down the road in Los Angeles, but when you play that many games on the road and you don't have a lot of time to spend at home, that's wear on a team, especially this time of year. So I think the Rams are certainly the more well-rested team. I think the fact that they blew a 17-0 lead just a couple weeks ago is a major impetus. They're tired of hearing it. I frankly think the Rams are a better team, and I get that the Niners have played fantastic defense against them, but to me, Matt Stafford is just playing lights out right now. Deebo Samuel's banged up, and Jimmy G is waiting for his next pick to happen.
Jim, be honest. Be honest. Are you just trying to poke Uncle Big Nick at this point?
No, I'm really not. And I'll be honest. Going into this week, I kind of wanted to pick the 49ers. I thought that I might. I was fairly certain I was going to take the Bengals going into my day or whatever of handicap. I wasn't sure on the Rams-Niners. I had no feeling one way or the other. I mean, when you do beat a team twice, I don't believe in all that mess of it's hard to beat a third time. None of that factored in. But when I started going through and trying to pick reasons for both teams, and I remembered that the Niners were on the road so much, and I went and looked, and then I started looking back, and no one else has really done it. The Jets were on the road 6 out of 8, twice, back-to-back seasons, lost in the championship game. The Steelers won 4 in a row in the playoffs on the road. If you count the Super Bowl a road game, it's away from home. But it doesn't happen very much, and I don't think we can understand what the wear and tear does. So, no, I'm not trying to poke the bear, I guess, and I'm sure he'll be in rare form tomorrow in attitude. But it is what it is. I went through my handicap, and I have to trust it.
I think Devin agrees with you, though. Devin, you're on the Rams as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm on the Rams to win outright and cover the spread, as well as for the over to hit in this game. But I agree with a lot of what Jim said. I think the Rams are just a better football team. And, when I look at, over the last few weeks, how they've kind of matured and how they've taken kind of that next step you want to see in the Super Bowl contender, beating Tampa in Tampa, that's impressive. I know Tampa was pretty beat up. They had injuries. But when you go there and win, I know they blew a big lead in that game as well. But, I mean, if you take away those couple fumbles, they win by multiple scores. But their defense played dominant through the first 3 quarters of that game, and I think you're going to see more of the same with that. The 49ers become pretty one-dimensional in these playoffs, running the ball with Deebo Samuel. The Rams are going to key into that. They know how to kind of defend that at this point in the season. I know they struggled in that Week 18 game, but when you look at everything that's kind of happened this year, they started off really good. They had that middle of the season stretch where they didn't play too well, but then they finished it off so far in these playoffs and they played really well. And I would like the 49ers throughout the playoffs this year, and like them to cover the spread last week as well as a couple of weeks ago against the Cowboys. But I just think that the Rams are the better team. They're playing much better on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. And I think Matthew Stafford is going to be a difference maker in this one.
And we're just looking at our weekend best bets, Devin. You like that actually parlayed with the over. And I like the over in this game as well, though not as much as I do in the Chiefs-Bengals. It's tough to have watched the Niners last week and say, hey, this game's going over. So explain that pick.
I see the over because I just think the 49ers are going to have a hard time stopping the Rams. And I think that defense has been taking hit after hit. Odell Beckham is playing at a high level right now, and obviously so is Cooper Kupp. I just don't think the 49ers have enough in the back end to cover everything that the Rams can throw at them. And now you add in Cam Akers, who is now a couple games back from that injury. It was his first game back when they played a couple weeks ago. But I feel like they're a complete team right now. I do think the 49ers are going to be able to score points, but I just don't think when it comes down to the third and fourth quarter, I think the Rams run away with it and put their foot down, and they don't. They definitely won't get conservative in this game. Once they go up by a couple of scores, I think they'll keep the foot on the gas.
If Sean McVay stays conservative for another game, he ought to be fired at half, like on the spot, coming off the field. Jim, your best bet, Bengals over the Chiefs. We talked about that, but one more time, it's Joe Cool and the kids.
Yeah, and look, I bet against them last week. I didn't. I thought they were in a bad spot, but the spot doesn't matter. They took a 10-point lead and did just enough to hold on, but they keep finding ways. Maybe they're a team of destiny. Maybe they're not. I don't know, but I do think that Carville came up with a great little mention there. Wouldn't it be great for Joe Burrow to go finish his Hollywood story in Hollywood? I mean,
I said that. He said Aaron Donald was going to kill him.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
He said Aaron Donald was going to kill him if they played the Rams.
That is not good, Matt. I don't need the handicap to tell you what I'll be picking if Bengals and Rams are playing each other. The Bengals, if they do somehow pull off the upset, they want to play the 49ers. They do not want to play the Rams. They will get destroyed. But that being said, last point, going back to Uncle Big Nick, and just to give him a little preview of what's coming tomorrow, he's talking like a fan, and I'm being in dead seriousness.
Oh, of course.
He's talking like a fan, a road excuse, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't listening. I'm not talking about last week's Rams cross-country trip. I'm talking about what the Niners have had to do for basically 2 months now, and that is go on the road every week but 2. There's a huge difference between going across the country and coming back home. Not only that, the Rams got to go to sunny Florida where it was 60 degrees. The 49ers had to go play in wind chills of 2, and it snowed the whole second half. That also takes a toll on bodies as well. And the physical matchup they had with Dallas on the road before doesn't help either. So I don't think he's listening. I'm not talking about just last week. I'm talking about what they've had to endure. So that is the game to me that is the most interesting. I obviously, maybe it's a little bit of fan in me that's pulling for Joe Burrow and loves the underdog story. But the reason why it's my best bet is because, frankly, none of these games are easy to pick, and they're both games that I would probably lay off if it were the regular season.
Well, that is true, and we're out of time, but it's going to be a great Sunday. Bengals Chiefs AFC title game at 2:00. Chiefs laying a touchdown, and then the NFC Championship game at 5:30 on Sunday. 49ers and Rams. It's Rams -3.5. A couple of announcements before we go. You can play Beat the Pros, pick all the playoff games, including the 2 on Sunday against Jeff Duncan. Duncan's picks, by the way, for this week. Duncan's picks this week were the Chiefs and the 49ers. He likes a rematch of the Super Bowl from a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, we're on opposite sides again.
Oh, I know. And go in and pick against Duncan. If you beat him, you can win a trip for 2 to Harrah's, New Orleans. You go to NOLA.com/beatthepros for that one. Also want to remind you one more time, go do it right now. If you don't do it by tomorrow morning, you do not get this bonus. The bonus is going down at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's when the app goes live, 9 a.m. But if you download tonight, you get a $300 bonus and a deposit match up to $3,000. So go to NOLA.com/Caesars to take advantage of that. And then finally, we are having a special live show tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We'll be back with you. It's the debut of our new show. It's going to replace Odds and Ends on Monday, but we're having a special edition tomorrow. It's called Bayou Bets. And we will have Ken Fuchs, the head of sports for Caesar Sportsbook, on to talk about the launch, to talk about the big weekend. It won't just be me. It'll be Jim and Devin and Spencer as well, all talking about that, talking about our first bets on the app and getting your comments. What did you do when the app was downloaded? So we shall see. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. right here on these same social media channels. For Devin and Jim, I'm Zach Ewing. This has been At the Book, everybody.